So how did on-water matters become on-screen matters? How did the immigration department get into the movie business? Well, it's complicated. When we heard about it, we put our reporter Margot on the case, and what we've since learned is that the federal government has commissioned a $4 million telemovie as part of its anti-people smuggling communications campaign. The plot might include asylum seekers drowning at sea while trying to reach Australia. At least we understand that's one possible ending. And that would hardly be a distortion, since we know that was the fate of more than 1,200 people. The telemovie will be screened to audiences in conflict zones around Syria, Iraq and Afghanistan, the so-called source countries, and in transit countries that might include Indonesia. Now, it's not the first time the government's gone down the drama route. Under Labor, Customs commissioned a radio drama series for Pakistan and Afghanistan, aimed at deterring asylum seekers from boarding boats to Australia. So tonight we ask, is this a good idea, or does it cross the line between public service message and propaganda? Well, shortly we'll be joined by two leading filmmakers here and in New York. First, here's Margot O'Neill's report.
This anti-terrorist Afghan police show called Eagle 4 was the biggest drama ever filmed in that country when it first aired in 2010. But was the Afghan audience ever told that it was largely funded by the US Embassy in Kabul?
Are you shooting in this direction?
Australian producer Trudy Tierney, who was already making soapies in Afghanistan, helped write and direct Eagle 4. The Americans wanted the TV series to portray the Afghan police force as professional and honest. This was an incredible stretch, says Tierney, because the Afghan police were notoriously regarded as corrupt drug-taking thugs. But Trudy Tierney explains in her 2014 memoir, Making Soapies in Kabul, that we would be well paid for this particular piece of propaganda. And it wasn't just the US Embassy. Other embassies, as well as NATO and aid agencies, all apparently commissioned TV and radio programs pushing messages that included gender equality, anti-drugs and extremism, and pro-Afghan military. Trudy Tierney says she was nothing more than a propaganda merchant for clients with the aim of influencing audience values and behaviour to suit the objectives of NATO and its allies. The official term was psychological operations, better known as PSYOPs. Mostly she produced so-called grey PSYOPs, which means the target audience is never told who's funding the production. Most of our clients had PSYOPs units attached to them, and these were the people who we ultimately answered to. While promoting her book last year, Trudy Tierney maintained the messaging was about improving Afghan lives.
But a lot of the shows I worked on, the drama serials, they were actually funded by external clients, and they were used as a way to convey positive messaging to the Afghan audiences. So we'd have in our shows messaging around women's rights and the importance of education, particularly for young girls, health issues, the dangers of insurgency in the community. And of course the shows had to be entertaining, otherwise no one would watch them. But my writing team became very adept at weaving these messaging ideas into the storylines.
And in its pure sense, I guess it is a propaganda element into it, yeah. Why were you doing that?
It was seen as a way of, it was almost a social engineering exercise.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say. It was a way of projecting an ideal Afghanistan, which a lot of the people that I worked with, my writers, my producers, my directors, this is what the Afghanistan was that they wanted to see. So I did initially have a few qualms about the whole propaganda angle to it, but because my team were right behind the messaging we were delivering, and because it was fundamentally positive and pointing the way to a better Afghanistan, I got on board.
After returning to Australia in 2012, Trudy Tierney and others established a Sydney-based production company called Put It Out There Pictures. The company's website describes how conflict media is a largely untapped multi-million-dollar industry that has investors, including the UN, the US State Department and individual embassies contributing to projects like drama productions, films and documentaries. And now the Australian government, which is using the company to get into movies. Last month, Put It Out Their Pictures won a $4.1 million contract from the Federal Department of Immigration and Border Protection. Lateline's been told the contract is for a telemovie to deter asylum seekers from coming to Australia by boat. The intention, we've been told, is to broadcast some multi-million-dollar drama later this year in countries like Iraq, Syria and Afghanistan. One possible plotline involves asylum seekers drowning at sea after paying people smugglers. At the same time, other asylum seekers who stay behind and register with the UN High Commissioner for Refugees get visas. The Immigration Department says the storyline will realistically portray the challenges facing asylum seekers. Not everyone is convinced.
The risk we run is that we'll end up funding the most expensive fantasy film since The Lord of the Rings. Ordinary Afghans in a place like Pakistan are well aware that something like 3/4 of applications for resettlement through bureaucratic means are unsuccessful.
International Afghanistan expert Professor William Maley wonders if the plot will reflect the rapidly deteriorating security situation in many countries because of the advance of Islamic State and a resurgent Taliban. It's prompted the worst global refugee crisis since World War II.
बुध की शब अलमदार रोड पर रहमतुल्लाह चौक के करीब स्नूकर क्लब में खुदकुश हमला किया गया.
Human Rights Watch last year reported on the escalating violence against Afghan Hazara asylum seekers in Pakistan.
A lot of people don't feel that they can risk spending a year in a dangerous environment waiting for bureaucracy to respond to them. And this is one of the reasons why people smugglers are often a much more attractive option, because anecdotally people smugglers can start moving people within about 5 days of getting a down payment.
Professor Maley believes the $4 million would be better spent on helping the UNHCR process asylum seekers faster. Neither the Immigration Department nor Put It Out Their Pictures would directly address if audiences would be told the telemovie is fully funded by the Australian government. But the department said each broadcast will be accompanied by a major awareness campaign across television and social media. Trudy Antieni told Lateline she believed the telemovie will be so powerful it could help save people from detention, disappointment and even death.
Paying a people smuggler is not a ticket to Australia.
But Professor Maley doubts that government campaigns can be that effective.
Australia by boat? There is no advantage.
There's actually quite a famous photograph from September 2011 which shows a bomb blast in Mizan Chowk in Quetta with body parts everywhere, and in the background there is a sign put up by the Australian government saying don't try to come to Australia by a boat. Now, if the risk that you face is being blown to pieces, blown to smithereens by a bomb, the threat that you shouldn't get on a boat is not necessarily a particularly credible one.
Well, you'll find the full statements from the Minister, his department and Trudy Antieni on our website. We did contact Trudy Antieni to see if she'd come on the show tonight. She's currently in Dubai and she's unavailable.